Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're breaking down the FBI's top-down approach to offender profiling. We'll hit all the key points you're going to need for that AQA A-level psychology exam.
So, this is the big question, right? How do you get inside the head of a killer, just from what they leave behind at the scene? The top-down approach was one of the first major attempts to create a system for doing just that. Let's dive in and see how they did it.
Okay, here's our game plan. We're going to cover the method and the offender types for your AO1 knowledge, then look at how it's applied for AO2, and finally, we'll get into the all-important evaluation for AO3.
Right, let's kick things off with the absolute essentials, your AO1 knowledge. Where did this idea even come from, and what are the nuts and bolts of how it works?
This is often called the American approach, and it came out of the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit way back in the 1970s. The name top-down is the real key here. It means you start with a big, pre-existing theory, a template if you like, and then you try to make the evidence from the crime scene fit into one of your boxes. You're working from the general down to the specific.
So, where did these templates come from? Well, get this. The entire system was built on interviews with just 36 convicted serial murderers in the US. We're talking about guys like Ted Bundy. Now think about that for a second. A whole system of profiling based on a tiny group of very specific, and let's be honest, probably not very truthful people. Remember that number, 36. It's a massive weakness we're going to come back to in our AO3 evaluation.
To make it all seem a bit more scientific, the FBI laid out their process in these 6 stages. It's pretty logical, really. You start by gathering all the data, the profiling inputs, and you work all the way through to apprehension, where, and this is crucial, you check to see if your profile was actually accurate. Knowing these stages is some solid AO1 knowledge for you to bank.
Okay, now we're getting to the absolute heart of the top-down approach. The entire thing hangs on this one single idea, that you can basically sort all serious offenders into one of 2 different camps.
And here they are. These are the 2 neat little boxes the FBI came up with. On one side, you have your organized offender. This is your movie villain, right? Super intelligent, plans everything down to the last detail, socially charming. And then on the other side, you've got the disorganized offender. This person is impulsive, chaotic, leaves a mess, and makes a lot of mistakes. This distinction, organized versus disorganized, is everything to the top-down approach.
All right, theory's done. Let's talk application and how you can use this stuff to grab those AO2 marks. How does this actually look in a real investigation? And what bigger psychology debates does it plug into?
Ted Bundy is the absolute poster child for the organized offender. He was smart, he was charming, and his crimes were meticulously planned. He had a specific type of victim. The profile told police, hey, you're not looking for some weird loner hiding in a basement. You're looking for someone who can blend in, someone who can win your trust. And that was a huge deal.
But, and it's a massive but, real life is rarely that clean. Take the UK case of John Duffy, the railway rapist. His crimes had all the hallmarks of an organized offender. He planned his attacks near railways for a quick getaway, but his personal life? A total mess. Couldn't hold down a job, socially isolated, classic disorganized traits. He's a perfect AO2 example of how real people just don't fit into these neat boxes. He breaks the model.
And this leads us to a golden nugget for your AO2 essays, the nomothetic versus ideographic debate. The top-down approach is pure nomothetic. It tries to create general rules or templates to slap onto every situation. Now that can be a useful starting point, for sure, but it completely ignores the ideographic side of things. You know, the unique individual person behind the crime. Their specific history, their unique motivations, all of that gets lost.
Okay, time for the crucial bit, the AO3 evaluation. Let's weigh this thing up, strengths versus weaknesses. Nailing this part is how you get into those top mark bands, so listen up.
Remember that number 36? Well, this is where it comes back to haunt the theory. For a killer AO3 point, we can use the grave criteria to just tear it apart. First, generalization ability. Is it generalizable? No way. It's based on a tiny sample of American male serial killers. How can you apply that to, say, a female arsonist in Japan? Next, reliability. The interviews weren't standardized at all, so they're really hard to replicate. And the big one, validity. The data comes from convicted murderers. These are master manipulators who have every reason to lie or show off. That just torpedoes the validity of the whole thing.
And here's the final nail in the coffin. Psychologist David Cantor, who is a huge name in the more modern bottom-up approach, ran the numbers. He analyzed 100 U.S. serial murder cases, and what did he find? There was simply no statistical evidence for two distinct types of offender. He found that most killers are a jumbled mix of both organized and disorganized traits, which just shatters the core idea of the top-down model.
So, to wrap up the evaluation for your exam answer, look, it's not all bad. It was historically important, and it can give police a simple, intuitive place to start an investigation. But its scientific foundations are incredibly shaky. It was built on a terrible sample, its main idea has been debunked by research, and it's just far too subjective.
So what's the bottom line? Well, you shouldn't just dismiss it completely. The top-down approach was a really important first step. It was pioneering. It got people thinking about the psychology of the offender. Think of it as a crucial but very flawed first draft that really paved the way for the more scientific, data-driven methods that came later.
And that leaves us with one final massive question to chew on. The top-down approach, with its reliance on intuition and professional experience, really treats profiling as an art form. But modern approaches argue it has to be a science, built on hard data and statistics. So what do you think? Is it an art or is it a science? That's a fantastic question to leave turning over in your mind.